This is the fourth in a series of scholarship workshops that I have been presenting over the summer. I think most of you in attendance know who I am. Just in case, my name is Dr. Douglas Dow. I am the Associate Dean of the Hobson Wildenthal Honors College. I am a professor of political science, and I am also the director of our university's Office of Distinguished Scholarships. I work with our students who are applying for these distinguished national and international scholarships to both bring some amount of publicity and clarity about what are these scholarships, what are the opportunities, to help to clarify what is the function and the purpose of these different scholarships, what does it mean to be a scholar that fits with a particular type of a scholarship, and to help our students as they are applying, writing the applications, submitting their applications. And so I am really happy to be presenting today a conversation about the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans, a term that the Soros Fellowship coined. I'll be talking a little bit more about. So what I'd like to do is I have a PowerPoint slide, a sort of functional PowerPoint slide that I want to be going through. So I'm going to share my screen and just begin to talk to you about the application, about the scholarship, what it gives you, what a New American is, what the application process looks like, what the criteria of selection are. I'm going to be sharing my screen, so I'm not going to be able to see individuals if you raise your hand. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is be taking notes. This will be recorded, but take notes and jot down questions you may have. And at the end of my talk, which will last probably about 30 minutes, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And you can pose to me a question either by clicking your raise hand button on your screen, and I will call on you. You can unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can type it into the chat box if you would prefer, and I will also be reading questions that come to me in the chat box. All right. So let me begin. Sorry, hold on. Sorry about this. Just a minute ago, I had this on my screen. I don't know why it's not calling up. There we go. There we go. That's better. All right. And just to make sure, Wendy, can you give me confirmation? Can you see the Soros insignia on the screen?
Yes, we're good to go.
We're good to go. Okay, very good. Sorry about that. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans. This is a scholarship that is open for all that fit within the category of New Americans, and it is a fellowship that is designed to fund at incredibly generous levels post-baccalaureate work in all fields, all disciplines, masters, PhDs, MD programs, JD programs, MBA programs, any, with very, very few exceptions, any post-baccalaureate graduate or professional education, funding this program for 2 years at very, very generous levels. This is a composite picture of the Soros Fellowship class of 2020. There are 30 fellows that are selected for every cycle, for every class. This is the latest class to be selected. So this is a competitive scholarship out of all of the applications, and there are usually about 2,000 to 2,200 applications. They come down to 30 fellowship winners. So here is a sort of composite of the class of 2020. So just talk a little bit about the background of the Soros Foundation. Many people think that the Soros Fellowship is George Soros. Not. It is his close relative, Paul and his wife, Daisy Soros, who established this scholarship back in 1997 with an initial contribution of $50 million, adding in the year 2010 $25 million more. So this is a privately funded but quite deeply and well-endowed funded scholarship. What do you get from a Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship? The main thing that you get, the main benefit that is derived from this is that you get a tremendous amount of financial subsidization for your graduate education. An award that may total up to $90,000 across 2 years. You are funded for 2 years, and that funding includes a stipend, which is up to $25,000 a year, as well as 50% of any tuition or fees that you may be incurring as a student, up to $20,000 per year for 1 to 2 years.
Dr. Now that PowerPoint disappeared.
The PowerPoint disappeared. I am sorry about that.
The last slide we saw was the family.
Okay. My apologies. Can you see this now, Wendy?
I think it takes a moment to come back, so let's give it a moment. Not quite yet.
No, what are you seeing right now?
Just you.
Just me.
And the lovely background you have.
All right, hold on.
Okay, it looks like it's there we go.
Are we back?
We are. We just need it in play. It's kind of in your where you can edit mode.
Are we in slideshow now?
It looks like you're trying to get there. It takes it a second. There's a slight delay on the PowerPoints lately. Since the recent update, it delays a moment.
We should be back to the first slide, and I'll just screen through it if we are back in slideshow mode.
I'm not sure about everybody else, but I'm still in the edit mode, not in slideshow mode. Oh, I think it's just going really slow. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're back on the first screen.
Okay. So we should be slideshow with the benefits of the fellowship.
We are now on benefits.
We are back in benefits. All right, thank you. Sorry, everyone, for the technical delay. So just to go back, this will fund you for 2 years of any type of graduate or professional education training. It is coming with both a stipend to support you as well as paying 50% of any required tuition and fees at your school, again, for 1 up to 2 years. Most scholarships and fellowships of this sort also are there to create a cohort of Soros Fellows. And indeed, there is something called the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellows Association that meets and engages actively. The first class of Soros Fellows was chosen in 1998. So the oldest of the Soros Fellows are sort of beginning in mid-career right now, sort of coming into their own. This is an opportunity for fellows to get to know each other. This is obviously multidisciplinary, people from all fields of life, all fields of academic and intellectual endeavor are there. Interestingly, Vivek Murthy, who was a former U.S. Surgeon General, was part of the inaugural class of Soros Fellows. And just last year, he spoke to the Alumni Association and talked a little bit more about it. So there is a cohort community building aspect of the fellowship, but Soros Fellows are not all going to one university. It's not like the Knight Hennessy Scholarship where everyone's there at Stanford University. People are all around the United States. I should say that the Soros Fellowship, which funds all sorts of degree plans, but they are degree plans only within the United States, so only within universities in the United States. But there are Soros Fellows all over the United States, and there is this attempt to create a lifelong alumni and cohort opportunity as well. So the word is New American. What does it mean to be a New American? To be applicable for applying for Soros, you must be a New American. And there's basically 2 criteria by which one is identified as a New American under the Soros's conception of being a New American. The first criteria that I have here is the criteria that everyone who's applying for Soros must meet. To be eligible, your birth parents must have both been born outside of the United States as non-U.S. citizens, and both parents must not have been eligible for U.S. citizenship at the time of their birth. There is wording in there as well for those applicants who have been raised not with 2 parents but with 1 parent, that the parent that raised you, that parent must have been born outside of the United States as a non-U.S. citizen, ineligible for U.S. citizenship at the time of their birth. So if you were raised by both parents must fit this criteria. If you were raised in a single parent household, the parent that raised you must be able to fit this criteria. And then the second criteria, one of the following categories must also apply for each applicant. You may be a natural citizen of the United States, a natural citizen meaning that you were born in the United States if your parents were both born abroad as non-U.S. citizens. If you, the applicant, were born outside of the United States, you are applicable if you fit into one of the following categories. If you are not a natural citizen, but a naturalized citizen. If you were as a child adopted, born outside the U.S., without American citizenship, but were awarded U.S. citizenship because of your adoption. If you are a non-U.S. citizen, but you possess a green card, you may apply as a new American to the Soros. If you have been awarded the status of a refugee, or if you and your family have been awarded asylum status in the United States, you may apply for a Soros as a new American. The Soros is open also, and I think that this is important to note, to all current and past DACA recipients. So if you possess DACA status, you are also a new American capable of being an applicant for the Soros Foundation. So we've got a very broad, and it is purposely broad in its definition of what a new American means. I will say I've been working with scholars on the Soros Foundation Fellowship for well over a dozen years now, and I have noticed small tweaks in the definition of what is a new American, and each reconceptualization of this term has been done in order to make for a broader and more capacious definition of what a new American is. So over time, the conception of being a new American has actually grown more diverse and more broad over time, which is something that as a scholarship advisor here at UTD, I certainly affirm. So the number one criteria for determining, do I fit as a potential applicant for a Soros scholarship, is, of course, are you in fact a new American? There are a handful of other requirements to be able to apply. There is an age requirement. You need to be 30 years old or younger. The idea here is that this is a scholarship for people that are at the very earliest beginnings of their careers. So this is explicitly not a scholarship that someone can be applying for if they are making a midlife or mid-career change or shift into some type of graduate or professional education. So you need to be 30 years old or younger. You cannot be working. The whole idea of this deep-pocketed fellowship is to allow you to focus 100% on your scholarship, on your studies. So with a few caveats, you are not allowed to work. Certainly you are not allowed to work full-time. And here's the other thing, and this is one that's important to be thinking about as you think about when is the best time that I should apply. If you are applying in a cycle, you are expected to begin full-time graduate or professional work the next semester, not the next semester, the next fall, the next year. So in other words, if you are applying for a Soros in this cycle, the 2020, 2021, you are going to be expected to begin in the fall of 2021 your graduate program. They do not allow you to defer it. You can, however, apply after you've already gotten into a program so that you receive your funding in your second and your third year of the program itself. I have worked with a number of students that are applying in the months right after graduating, when they already know where they're going, they already know what their program is going to be, and they're simply applying for this fellowship to sponsor them through their second and third year of a program. But you cannot defer this this fellowship in its first year. The application is not a long application, and it's got, and we'll talk about this a little bit in just a few minutes, it's got two very important essays you have to write, but the basic application, which is all an online application, is pretty basic. You have to confirm your eligibility as a new American. You have to basically confirm what type of new American you are. You give your personal information, your history of higher education. If you have not yet selected a graduate program, if you are still applying, for example, you need to list the graduate programs that you are applying for. The Soros allows you to apply to up to 4 graduate programs, or to list 4 graduate programs. And so for those of you that might be seniors this year, you're going to be applying for a Soros simultaneous to applying for your graduate or professional post-baccalaureate education. And in that case, you would simply list the top 4 graduate programs that you are applying to. Like anything, you need recommendations. And you're going to be, on your online application, you're going to be able to put in the name and the email of your recommenders that will get an email, and they'll be uploading their letters of recommendation. Minimum of 3 letters of recommendation are required, but they will accept up to 5 letters of recommendation. I always stress a couple of things when you are thinking about letters of recommendation. One, think about people that know you well. Think about individuals that are able to evaluate you as an individual, as opposed to saying this person was in my class, they got this grade, that puts them in this percentage of students that I have taught, but nothing personal. You want people to be able to talk about your character, your personality, your initiative, drive, creativity, curiosity, as well as to be able to say good things about your applicability for the graduate programs that you're applying for. So get people that know you. That actually is more important than having somebody with a big title. Somebody with a well-known name or a big title that doesn't know you, that is not able to say anything personal about you, is not very helpful. A lot of people prefer people with big titles. If you have somebody that's got a big important title, who's a well-known figure, and who knows you, that's great. But if you've got to choose between 2 letter writers, one somebody who's very important and well known but doesn't really know you, and somebody who maybe does not have such a sexy title or position, but who can speak very personally and directly about you, go with the latter all the time. The last thing I'll say about letters of recommendation, and if you want to ask me more questions about that in the Q&A, I'm happy to take those questions. You want to have a diversity of letters. You want people to be saying detailed and good things about you, but you don't necessarily want 3 letters that all say she's a very smart student and writes really well. 1 letter, yes, maybe 2, but you want to be able to have a portfolio of recommendations that speak to the diversity and depth of your intellectual persona. So, think about faculty members that you can have, right? But also think about people that maybe were your supervisors in internships, or your employers or bosses at jobs that you have had. People that may know you both inside but also outside of a more traditional university context. You'll need to be submitting also a resume, transcripts. You may use unofficial transcripts, but if you are recognized as a finalist, you will need to provide them official transcripts, scores of standardized tests if required, and if you have taken them by the deadline, which is going to be the end of October. If you've not taken your standardized testing, or if you are not required to have a testing, a GRE, or an MCAT, or an LSAT, or the like, then there's a place on the application where you can just explain that was not required. There are places online for linking to exhibits, works of art, music, videos of dance, for example, for those that are going into a more arts related program. So fairly basic. But at the heart there of the submissions are 2 essay questions. So this is obviously where the real thinking begins. Essay number 1, a maximum length of 1,000 words, and you will be cutting and pasting your essay into a text box, so they will be counting precisely 1,000 words, and you may not have an essay of 1,001 words. You will have to have exactly 1,000 words. Let me just read it out. Tell us your experiences as a new American. Whether as an immigrant yourself or the child of immigrants, how have your experiences as a new American informed and shaped who you are and your accomplishments? And then that sort of gives you a little bit more sort of context to sort of get you thinking. Feel free to discuss how individual people, your family, your teachers, institutions, aspects of American law, culture, society, or governance have made an impact on your life as an immigrant or as a child of immigrants. The program is interested in understanding the context of your personal, your professional, your academic accomplishments. On the one hand, this seems absolutely straightforward. This is a scholarship for new Americans, so talk about yourself as a new American. But in fact, the languages and narratives of immigration are so commonplace within our American discourse that oftentimes students that are writing their application, the first or second drafts, they're really not writing something that's a personal story, but something that really is much more about participating in an experience of a family migrating from one spot in the globe to the United States that is really a common experience. So thinking about what it means to you, the individual, the applicant, to be a new American, and saying something that applies to you but would not necessarily apply to hundreds of other potential applicants, that's where the real difficulty of essay number 1 comes in. Essay number 1 really is a request to think creatively about what it means for you to either be an immigrant to the United States or to be a first-generation immigrant, the child of a first-generation American, the child of immigrants, and to say it in a way that is personal to you. Excuse me. Essay number 2. Essay number 2, also 1,000 word length, is going to be, I think, a little bit more familiar to all of you that are going to be applying for medical school, law school, graduate school. Tell us about your current and near-term career-related activities and goals, as well as why you decided to pursue the specific graduate program or schools that you have. How do you see your current work and study informing your early career goals? If you have not been accepted in the program, tell us why you've selected the programs, those up to 4 programs that you will be listing, to which you're applying. So talk a little bit about what type of program are you applying to? What is it you want to accomplish with your post-baccalaureate education? Why have you chosen that field? What's the relationship between your post-baccalaureate educational goals and your longer-term career goals? And talk a little bit about your choice of schools or programs. Why are you applying to these particular schools? What makes them a good fit for you? So this is really a request to talk about your intellectual persona, not as a new American per se, but as a scholar pursuing post-baccalaureate education, presumably in preparation for a career that will have some nexus, some connection to the educational opportunities that you are suggesting. So while I would not encourage you to simply cut and paste your personal statement for your graduate school applications, certainly this essay number 2 is more in line with that genre of essay writing. Selection criteria. I will just state off the bat. This is a terrific fellowship. It's also a highly selected and highly selective fellowship in which they select only 30 fellows. So what are they looking for? What is it that they are seeking? The Soros Fellowship Foundation identifies 3 primary and then 2 secondary criteria of selection. The 3 criteria that you see on your screen here are the 3 primary criteria of selection. Candidate has demonstrated creativity, originality, and initiative in one or more aspects of her or his life. The candidate has demonstrated a commitment to and a capacity for accomplishment that requires drive and sustained effort. In other words, some amount of stick-to-itiveness, some amount of planning. The candidate has demonstrated a commitment to the values expressed in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, including but not limited to support for human rights, rule of law, opposition to unwarranted encroachment on personal liberty, advancing the responsibilities of citizenship in the free age. Let me put this in just a little bit of context. 10 years ago, the first essay question wasn't about what it means to be a new American to you. It was an essay question about, talk about how your life is committed to furthering the goals of the Bill of Rights. A very difficult question for so many excellent applicants to be writing, especially those that were in the STEMS fields. I like to see this last criteria as a recognition that those that are selected as Soros Fellows are committed not just to excellence in academic initiative and accomplishments, not just to being future leaders in their field, but also to be making a contribution to the public life of the United States, understood as an open society, a diverse society, and a society in which those new Americans, those immigrants or the children of immigrants, are expected and encouraged to make an impact on public life. This third criterion is really an opportunity for you to think about what impact upon our broader civil society will my life, my engagement, my career have? In what way are my goals, my academic goals, my career goals, my goals as a participant within the American polity going to help further shape and develop our public shared community life? So that's kind of a broader way to sort of think about what that third criterion is. And I'm happy to try to clarify, instantiate, or give sort of further explanation to that third primary criteria in the Q&A if you would like. But let me just add, they have 2 other selection criteria, which are secondary yet still significant criteria. Candidate gives promise of continued significant contributions. Contributions are likely to reflect distinctive creativity, originality, and initiative, and will mark the candidate as a leading and influential figure within her or his field of endeavor. Will you likely be taking on significant innovative or leadership roles or positions within your field of professional endeavor? If the answer is yes, that's good. That's what they're looking for. And the graduate candidate whose graduate training is relevant to his or her long-term career goals and of potential value for enhancing her or his future professional accomplishments. Basically, what I was saying before, that idea that the graduate education that the fellowship is helping to support are going to have an intimate connection or nexus to your long-term career goals and career plans. So this sort of brings to a conclusion the formal part of my my presentation. Deadline. The deadline for your application being submitted is going to be October 29th, 2020 at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, what that means is that you must have submitted your application. You must hit send before that date and that time, but also so must all of your letter writers. So everyone must have submitted their part of your application, both you and your recommenders, by October 29th. So that is also the drop dead deadline for your letter writers as well. There is no requirement that the University of Texas at Dallas establish any sort of institutional endorsement of your application. There are some scholarships like the Rhodes Scholarship, the Marshall Scholarship, the Truman Scholarship, in which this university must officially endorse you. That is not the case for Soros. I'm happy to be working, obviously, with people that are applying for the Soros, but this is something that applicants can do completely and wholly on their own. You need to have between 3 and 5 letters of recommendation, but you do not need any formal university endorsement. From all of the applications that are submitted fully, completely, and on time, the Soros will select 77 finalists to be interviewed. Usually the interviews are held in February, and they are held in person. They're usually held either in Los Angeles or New York, and you basically choose which coast you want to go to. They have not made the announcement of whether or not they will be doing in-person interviews in February, or if they will be doing them virtually. If I had to guess, I would probably guess that they will be doing them virtually, but they've not yet made that announcement. But by March of 2021, they are planning to announce the 30 fellowship recipients of the Soros Fellowship for the year. So I am going to close this down, stop sharing. And if Wendy, can you just confirm that everyone can see me now as opposed to my slides? Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So I am opening up the floor for any questions. I have my chat box out, and so feel free to either hit your raise hand button and I will call on you, or you can type something. Yes, Kinish.
Hi, Dr. Doe.
Good to hear from you. How are you?
I'm doing good. My question was, is this any sort of a rolling admission or rolling consideration? Is there any benefit to applying before the deadline or not?
Terrific question. Thank you. And the answer is no. It is not a rolling deadline. Nobody is looking at any application until all the applications are submitted on the day of the deadline.
Thank you so
no
much.
rolling admissions.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Sure. Sort of a follow-up to that question as well. There is no harm for applying for this when you are a senior. Being a senior, applying for your post-baccalaureate education is the earliest stage you can apply for it. But again, you can be applying for it when you've already graduated in the weeks before you actually start the program, seeking the funding for your second and third year. And you can be doing it both. So I'm looking on here of our participants here. I see a number of seniors. You can be applying for it this year. And if you get this year, great, then you can have it for your first and second year of post-baccalaureate education, or you can apply for it next year and have it for your second and third year, and you can be doing it both this year, and if you don't get it, not a problem. You can apply with no prejudice whatsoever a second time. More questions? One thing that I want to say, and I really want to encourage people to think seriously about this scholarship. But one thing that it does help to know, and this is something that I look at every single year. Every single year there are 30 fellows, and that's a low enough number where I'm able to sort of like look and concentrate upon some basic facts. Here's one fact about the selection of the 30 fellows every year that I love, I validate and appreciate, and that is that all different types of undergraduates or graduates of different undergraduate universities are represented. So people from elite schools, people from state schools, people from small liberal arts colleges, people from universities just like University of Texas at Dallas. There is a wide and diverse recognition of a broad subsection of colleges and universities that the Soros Fellows have gone to get their undergraduate education. I love and appreciate that. That is not always the case for some of these distinguished scholarships. That is certainly the case for the Soros. The flip side is that there does seem to be a preference within the Soros for applicants that are going on to the very best or most elite programs within their field. So there really is a strong preference. We see year after year many of the scholars going to Harvard, MIT, Yale, Berkeley, Stanford, Chicago. So one thing to be sort of thinking about is the place that you're going and the ability to identify why the school or the schools that you are applying for are really the best programs in the country for what it is that you want to be doing. So there's a real egalitarian dimension to the undergraduate institutions of the fellows, but there seems to be a preference for elite graduate programs when they're making their selection. And this is something that I've just noticed when I go through each year the 30 applicants, and I sort of see, well, where are these scholars going to be doing their studies? What type of institutions are the Soros funding? And my guess is in part that's because of this commitment to having Soros fellows that are likely to be movers and shakers within their particular field or their particular community once their career gets moving. So that is one thing I wanted to just sort of throw out there. That's something that I've learned through, cycle after cycle after cycle of working with students on a Soros application. Other questions? Don't be shy. Feel free to use the chat box.
Hi, Dr. Dow. Quick follow-up question.
Absolutely.
So for an applicant like myself that may be considering to, propose the scholarship for a JD program, and you mentioned that it's very important to indicate the reasons why you're choosing the schools that you wish to have your funding go towards. So in the context of a legal education, will this be sort of identifying perhaps like a section within the law that this school excels at teaching, whether it be like financial crime or whether it be immigration law? Does that sort of make sense?
Absolutely. And the answer to your question is yes, that is correct. Now, just like with your graduate school applications, there's a certain amount of guesswork when you talk about, well, what particular area are you going to be specializing in, whether you're going to med school, law school, or a program in electrical engineering. People change, people develop, but it's important in your graduate applications to be sort of identifying areas of interest that you are thinking at this point in time of specializing in, and then to be able to explain and talk a little bit about why. So if, for example, you are interested in studying law having to do with the intersection of law, regulation, and finance, then identifying those schools that have unique strengths in that particular subfield of law and talking a little bit about why those schools are the best fit for you is exactly what you want to be doing.
Thank you, Dr. Dow.
Yes, good question. Puya,
Hi, Dr. Dow.
how you doing?
I'm doing good. The question I had was, since the application has a deadline of October 29th, and let's say you're applying for med school in your senior year, of course, you probably wouldn't have an acceptance by that time, especially to one of those institutions that they are looking for that are more like higher tier. So would you update your application as you get your acceptances and send that into the Soros Foundation, or would you not update and just keep it at the school that you're applying to?
Very good question. The answer is that you're going to be listing the top 4 schools that you are applying for on your application and sort of explaining broadly why those 4 are the ones that you believe to be the best fit for you. You will have the opportunity to actually give an update if you are selected as a finalist. If you're selected as a finalist, you will be notified in mid to late January in preparation for a February interview. And at that point in time, they'll be asking for official, not unofficial transcripts, and you'll have the opportunity to clarify and define anything that may have been decided since the October 29th deadline. So in other words, if you don't know October 29th what medical school you're going to be going to, they don't necessarily want you to be updating that. They just don't have the resources to continually update the hundreds of people that are going to be adding things to the file. But if you are selected as one of the 77 finalists, then yes, you'll be able to say, by the way, I've now made my choice and I am going to University of Michigan Medical School or something like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? These have all been excellent and Very relevant questions. As I said at the end of my talk, you do not need to be working with anyone at this university on your Soros application. This is something that you can do freelance. You can do this on your own. You need the help and support of your letter writers, but there are no limitations to how many students at UTD can be applying. And unless somebody tells me that they're applying for Soros, to be perfectly honest, I don't necessarily know all of the people that are applying. I try to cast my net as widely as possible, but I don't always know people when people are applying for Soros, because you do not need to work with my office. That said, I am happy to be working with individuals who are applying for Soros. If you, a number of you have already contacted me. I know a number of you are not going to be applicable for Soros for a year or two. But I am always, when you are applying, I am willing to be talking with you, answering your questions one-on-one, and to be working through some of these essays. The essays are difficult. 1,000 words is not a lot. And it is not easy to be thinking really creatively about what it means for you to be a new American that helps define something that is uniquely personal and individual, as opposed to being part of what is really a Central American experience. And I believe that it's an incredibly rewarding experience, but it is one that sort of like takes some amount of drafts, and I'm happy to be working with people on those drafts. I am also happy, especially when we're doing a Soros, to be working with our alum. And so if somebody who is on this in this workshop right now applies in the summer and fall after they've graduated, where they are technically an alum of UTD, I am still very happy to be partnering and working with you on this application. But again, unlike some scholarships where you must have a very formal form of endorsement, that is not required here. So the degree to which you work with this university, you work with my office, is completely and utterly up to you. I'm going to make one call more for questions, either in the chat box or through raising your hand. The Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans is a terrific opportunity. It is broad in its definition of New American. It is, I think, speaking to something very central to our shared American community in terms of its sponsoring the academic and career goals of New Americans. It is broad and egalitarian in the schools that it is identifying. And it is one of the most deep-pocketed scholarships that you are going to find out there. It allows people, it's one of the few things that you can be applying for that are so well funded if you're applying to medical school and to law school, as well as graduate programs. So it's just a terrific opportunity. So I'm really happy, and I thank you for sharing part of your afternoon with me to learn a little bit more about the Soros. I think that everyone knows my email address. I'm going to just very quickly type it in there into the chat box. DougDow@utdallas.edu. If there's any way that I can be following up with you about a Soros, for some of you that may be imminently, for others that may be next cycle or 2 cycles away. If there is, however, anything that I can be doing to help aid you as you think about the Soros, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I want to thank you all. And with that, I'm going to bring our Soros Fellowship workshop to a close. I want to recognize and thank Ms. Kavanaugh for being our technological advisor in this and helping me with the technological glitches there. And I'm looking forward to seeing and conversing with a lot of you as we begin this unique new school year, to say the least. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Dow.
Thank you.